Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrei Osachuk. I welcome you to another training on Analysis Workspace in Adobe Analytics. The subject for today is total numbers. You will get to know how to properly show total numbers in Analysis Workspace projects. I will share with you some techniques and tips for total numbers visualizations. You may already think that this is quite obvious, this is just the basics. However, it's not. And based on my experience when I audit Adobe Analytics implementations and look into how workspace projects are organized, how they're used for dashboards that are then shared across the organization, I can see that quite frequently those who consume those reports, dashboards, misinterpret the total numbers. And this is just because of how they are shown in the projects. This training is based on a few scenarios. The first scenario is the following. As an analyst, I want to look at my primary KPIs for a certain date range for the site or mobile application where I have Adobe Analytics implemented. So, looks quite simple. If you have watched my previous trainings, you already should know how to do that. But let's do this together. So Freeform Table, and in the Freeform Table I will add a few metrics. Imagine that these are your primary KPIs. I will just reorder them a little. And in most of the cases this is already good. So you can just hide the lines and this will be your total numbers for the date range that you specified in the panel. Very often you have not 3, not 5 primary KPIs, but their number is about 7 or 10. And just to show it, let's add a few more metrics. I will just add the same metrics just to have the right quantity. So now we have 10 metrics, and let's imagine that all of them together are our primary KPIs. So the first scenario is ready, but now let's have a look at what we have, what type of challenges we and especially our colleagues may face with while they will be looking at this project. The first thing is all the numbers are on the gray background, so we need to read black on the gray color, not very convenient, but probably this is minor. The second thing is, in most of the cases, some of your primary KPIs will have quite a long name, and this will be not as easy as you can see now on the screen because there will be words that will be wrapped. So for example, this will be something like that. So maybe this is already not the best approach because there is not enough space in this table. But again, probably this is minor for you at the moment. So then the third thing is, when we look at this table, we can see day. Day stands for the dimension, but it's not so obvious for those you share this project with, especially if this project is shared in a PDF format. So what does day mean? Is it for today? Is it for yesterday? Obviously, you know that this is for the date range that you specified for the panel, but it's not so obvious. This may become confusing. Okay, so this was the first scenario. It was quite simple, and those challenges that I listed may be minor for you. But let's go further. The second scenario will be the following. As an analyst, I also want to compare my primary KPIs between different date ranges. And this is logical, because it's not so informative to know that, for example, I had almost 57,000 page views for this month. I want to know whether my traffic grew or went down, whether I have more orders last month versus the previous months, etc. And this is why you may want to add something similar, but for different date ranges. You want to compare your performance. Also, this was shown in a few previous trainings, but now let's have a look how we can approach this within this scenario. So for simplicity, I will call it primary KPIs, and we'll duplicate it to have another one. And this will be scenario number 2. So you already should know that you can simply replace this dimension with some other dimensions, which will be your custom date ranges. So what I can do, for example, I want to compare yesterday with the day before. I also want to compare last week versus the week before. So it will be 2 weeks ago, which is a predefined date range. And now I have this. But let's look into this on a deeper level. What challenges you already have recognized? I will show you a few challenges that I can see here. So first, let's look at the total numbers. The total numbers here doesn't match total numbers in the first table. Why does it happen? Because in the second freeform table, these total numbers are calculated as a sum of the numbers underneath. And this is obviously not accurate. And this may become confusing for those who will work with that. They may misinterpret this because they will think that it's total number of 10,029 unique visitors for these date ranges that you specified in the dimension area. And you may tell me, oh, you just need to update the settings, and you would be right. If we set up the setting, if we switch it to calculate totals based on all rows, we will see this number updated. But have a look, now this number matches the number on the top. But this number now already doesn't show you the total number of unique visitors that you had on the site for the date ranges that you specified in the table. Because these date ranges do not match together the date range that you specified in the panel. So the challenge is that you always need to explain, for example, that this total number is now showing total number of unique visitors for the date range. In our case, this is June 2019. Or if you don't want for some reason to show it this way, you can switch it back, and this will show you total sum. But in this case, you just need to make sure that your KPIs do not have the KPIs like unique visitors, like visits, like calculated metrics that depend on this type of metrics when you need to apply deduplication. So this is also quite challenging. Also, let's have a look at another challenge that I consider a challenge. When I look at this table, I want to compare yesterday with a day before. But in my table, yesterday is in the line number 4 and 2 days ago in the line number 1. It's not convenient. Imagine that you have here not 4, but probably 8 or 12 line items, like yesterday with 2 days ago, last week versus the prior week, last month versus the prior month, last quarter versus the prior quarter, etc. And this is happening because in the freeform tables, you need to either sort by metric, for example, let me sort by page views, or by dimension. And this is not so convenient, right? And despite the fact now you can see totals are not actually the totals that you expected to see. You also have a challenge with how you show these line items, how you sort them. So now I want to show you one of the tips for how you can sort these line items. In order to have a certain order of the line items or the values in this dimension area, what you need to do is delete this dimension. This is critical. Delete it, not replace, but delete it. And then add the values, the plates, in the order you want to have in your table. So for example, I will start with yesterday and then we'll add 2 days ago. Then I will add last week, and afterwards I will add 2 weeks ago. So you see that in this case, this table is not sorted by alphabet in the dimension column, and it's not sorted by the metric. This is the only approach that can help you to have the right order of the line items in your table. So now we still have some challenges with the total numbers. And my third scenario for today is to now show me that, but in the way that it will not be confusing, that the data will not be misinterpreted. So basically we need to fix something. What we can do in this case. And in this case, I will create a new freeform table and we'll start from scratch. I will start not with the metrics. I will start with the date ranges. I will basically swap columns and lines. So I will add yesterday, then 2 days ago. Then I will add last week and also add 2 weeks ago. You already see that the metric occurrences was appended. This is just the default approach how Analysis Workspace works. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to select my primary KPIs and put them into dimension area, right? And now what I can see is, doesn't matter how many metrics I will have in this dimension area, I will have enough space to read all of them, even if they have quite long name, and it will be easier for me to read from left to right. So for example, yesterday I can compare to 2 days ago, last week to 2 weeks ago, etc. But still, there is a challenge that these total numbers do not show me the right picture. And you can't do anything with this, because even if you go to the configuration area, you won't be able to find any type of configuration for totals. So these totals will show you just the sum of the values under each metric, or under each, in our case, date range. And this is again quite confusing, but there is a tip, there is a trick that you can apply. The trick is the following. If you add a metric with a percent format, the totals will disappear. So I will just add a bounce rate as a metric. And what you can see now, that totals are not any more confusing those who will look at this table. This is still not very good because all the metrics are ordered by, let's say, number of one of the metrics, and I'm going to use the same trick as in the scenario 2. I will replace the dimension area, I will recreate it from scratch, and for example, let's imagine that first I want to have visits, then I want to have unique visitors, then I want to have page views. Then I want to have another metric, for example, orders. And you see that they are sorted the way I add them to the table. And now, to make sure that this will not be confusing the total numbers, I will add the bounce rate. It can be any type of metric that returns the value in the percent format. So you can even create a placeholder for that. But the purpose of this approach is that the totals will disappear. And now you can see a very clean table with all your total numbers for each metric, right? Because now you have total number of unique visitors for yesterday, for 2 days ago, and you can validate this across other tables and visualizations. And this is probably the only approach that helps you to avoid any confusion, because everyone will understand that this is the metric for this or for that, and when in the cell where this metric intersects with the date range, this is the number you need to work with. So this is another tip. There is one kind of limitation that unfortunately it's not easy to have a comparison. Comparison meaning that, for example, I not only want to know that 2 days ago I have more visits than yesterday, so basically I have a worse result because my traffic went down. But I also would like to have the change, whether this is, I don't know, 15% more or 15% less. And obviously, again, if you watched my previous trainings, you know that you can use the summary change visualization, and you can have a look how it works. For example, now we will just briefly calculate that actually this is 31% decrease. But this is not convenient because you will need to apply summary change for every pair of metrics, which obviously not something that you want to do when you have so many different cells and KPIs. Another approach that you can try to do is you can add the horizontal bar chart. Map it to the right table. So this will be scenario 3. And now what I can do, I can just select a pair of metrics just to briefly visualize those KPIs that I want to focus on. They will not show me the change, but visually they will explain me whether something is going worse or better. And I can select, for example, let's imagine that I only have 2 primary KPIs that I want to visualize this way, so I can select the cells in the table, and this will show me KPI number 1, KPI number 2, and I will be able to know whether we are going worse or better based on the agenda, because now I can see that yesterday, which is the green bar, we had less page views than the day before. And this is probably the only way how you can visualize this in a quite simple manner. So hope it was helpful for you, and now you have another technique in your tool set that you can use on a regular basis when you work with Analysis Workspace in Adobe Analytics. Also, please let me know if you have any other techniques that will help you prepare total numbers representing your primary KPIs in a simple way that can't be misinterpreted by those who will work with your dashboards or report in Analysis Workspace, obviously. Also, if you have other questions regarding how Analysis Workspace works, or if you have any specific questions on this particular training, please leave your questions underneath in the comments. And thank you for watching. Talk to you next time. Bye.